This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Quite a week, huh, Gary?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly been a lot going on in your world. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. For those who aren't in the weeds, after I've only been on it for 2 years, the clients have been living it for 35 and 30 since their last conviction. And talking about the Menendez, Judge Michael Jessic resentenced them this week, basically struck the special circumstance, sentenced them to 50 to life. People say, well, when does that make them eligible for parole? Because they were youth offenders, 18 and 21, they're immediately eligible for parole. And within 24 hours, the clemency hearing that was set for June 13 was converted into a parole hearing. So,
yeah, but I heard Harvey Levin said that you really didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, well, Harvey, I had to kind of walk him through it slowly, but
yeah, you did. People who watch carefully on the Los Angeles Magazine YouTube channel this week will be able to see you walk him through slowly in short clips, as well as the long form version of Two Angry Men if they're so interested. But yeah, you walked him through it well, and I understand where his analysis may have come from, but he's wrong. It's, the clemency hearing that was set for June 13th, as you just alluded to, is now a parole board hearing. And I think history shows that there's a pretty high likelihood that we, before the end of summer, we have more good news.
Yeah, I think so too. And I obviously am happy for them, but I'm mostly happy for their family. One of the things that I think gets lost in all this, and one of the reasons that we put on 3 of the family members during the hearing, is not only had the family who are in this unicorn situation whereby the defendants who are their family members and the victims who are their family members, not only have they been kind of traumatized by that and traumatized by the sentence, and all of them, all the living ones are all uniformly stand shoulder to shoulder with having them released. They've been traumatized by this process. The process has not been, I don't think, welcoming to them. And there's been they've been walled off from any victim services. They've been savaged by those who are supposed to help them, and then you have where they've been left with, and they articulated that. When I say they, Anna Maria Baralt and Tamara and Diane, who testified, all talked about the fact that while there is a prurient interest in this, at the same time, they are human beings who have had all of their so-called dirty laundry aired in the public, been the butt of jokes and mockery and everything else, and they're just trying to heal as well. So it really, for the first time, many of them said afterwards, is the first good day they've had in the last 30 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was not just family members that you guys had on the stand speaking about the progress that the brothers have made, but from someone that I know that was in the courtroom, the person who really made the biggest impact for some, at least on an emotional level, was X-rated. I don't know I can't remember his full name.
Honore Brown.
Yeah.
He was something. For those who don't know, Honore Brown has the resume where he not only served time separately with Eric, served time separately with Lyle, and credits the two of them of putting him through Menendez University. By the way, that's what he testified to. He's been out for 7 years with not so much as a traffic ticket, is a performer, is doing well.
And the quote that really stuck with the person that I knew that was in the courtroom and with, me as well was, I now have children and I would probably still be in prison if it wasn't for the brothers and the Menendez University, as he dubs it, that they put him through, kind of, wringing him by the neck and telling him to get his shit together and having him, start making the right choices and get his life on track. And he gave very, very compelling and moving testimony on the stand that I'm sure was impactful with the judge and everyone else in that room.
Yeah, especially, the prosecutors were fixated on Sirhan, which as I argued, and I think everybody understood who didn't have a dog in this fight, that it really conflates two different issues. Sirhan was what the governor did is the governor reversed the parole grant, and he had the opposite of insight. Sirhan was somebody who immediately after his crime fessed up to it, took responsibility. Over the last 40 some odd years, he has evolved into, I don't remember, and some other guy did it. And that's the opposite of insight. The brothers, for all of the grandstanding that was done, they have incredible insight. And by the way, both of them read statements, what are called allocutions to the court, in which there was no doubt that they'd taken responsibility.
I read them. They were very detailed and thoughtful and insightful. And, there's been a lot of hay made by the district attorney about things that they said in the immediate aftermath of the crime and alleged lies they told and whatever. You've got to consider the ages, and that's why they're immediately eligible for parole. I mean, if you want to go back and put a spotlight on my life at 18 and 21, I would be embarrassed and not willing to defend things that I did at that age. And I was, not in the dire circumstances that they were.
Right. And to quote Adam, if Sonny and Natalia, and he always blames Natalia. If Natalia why is that? It's always Natalia as the ringleader. If Natalia walked into Sonny's bedroom on a Friday and said, "Hey, Sonny, you want to go blow away mom and dad on Sunday?" And then Sonny's response was, "This Sunday or next Sunday," you had done something wrong. And that was one of the other things that came out. Two of the witnesses, family members, talked about how disturbing it was, this thing called the hallway rule, where if Jose was down the hallway with one of the boys, you were not allowed to go down there, and Kitty was the enforcer of that. And can you imagine in today's day and age that being a thing? Can you imagine that in your house, if you're down the hall with your son, that there's a hallway rule that nobody can come into the room? I mean, it's just, it's unthinkable.
Not only can I not imagine it, but I've spent a lot of time working on this case kind of behind the scenes, and I've watched a lot of the original testimony about the hallway rule. And it would have been hard to watch 10 years ago. But as you allude to my current family and my young son, watching that stuff now is really, really difficult.
Yeah. And then, as you know, because you prepared some of the stuff, we didn't market some of the pictures that were sent.
I spent a lot of time editing those pictures out because they were so disturbing that we didn't want to, traumatize anyone in the family by showing that stuff again. But there it was, and I've seen it, and God, it's not a job I would really wish on anyone.
Yeah, and one of the other things that Honore Brown talked about, and the kind of, he got vigorously cross-examined by the prosecution. And I thought he held up not only enormously, but he was instructive. I learned things from him. And he says, he was talking about insight being not just the why of the crime, but what led you, but the kind of coping mechanism. And I thought, and the way he went through it, and I don't even do him justice on this, I thought he was outstanding. And it got me to thinking, it's an amazing thing when you give people a timeout like that, the kind of introspection and the levels of self reflection that they go through. And so I was impressed there. The other witness who was incredible to my mind there was a Judge Colby. And Judge Colby has a dog, a kind of a therapy dog is what I call it, like mine. And he goes to prisons, and he is a self-described law and order type judge. In fact, I asked him on the redirect. Actually, Milena, who was a co-counsel, took his direct. I just jumped in on the redirect. She asked him, have you ever done this before? And he said, no, he never advocated or testified on behalf of a prisoner ever. But that he felt that these guys were so remarkable, both Eric and Lyle, that he felt he had to do it. And talked about the guide dog program that's down there, talked about the green space program that they've started, talked about the hospice. I don't think people understand just the background of this resentencing law and what the purpose of it is. And the idea that a resentencing law is kind of a safety valve. Instead of just having all of these lifers who have no hope, it gives them some hope. And correctional officers are some of the guys that and women who are most kind of pro resentencing, because as people, you want people who are on their best behavior and who want the insight and want to kind of have a way or a pathway out.
Yeah, that was something that I hadn't thought about much, but upon listening to a lot of the commentary that you've done and others have done around this subject, made the most sense to me. Is yes, if you're a correctional officer, you want somebody in your, under your supervision that has hope, because they're going to then behave the right way and make your job enormously easier. So yeah, I can completely understand why correctional officers would be willing to advocate for someone who has done it the right way, because they're going to be a shining example to the next 10 people who will then, be doing it the right way and make their lives easier and get them home to their family at the end of the night. So that makes nothing but sense to me, even if it wasn't something that made sense to me before it was said by you and described.
And one of the things that also I think was a theme for the resentencing is they did all of this work before they had any hope.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that speaks to the credibility, to the sincerity, to the authenticity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's one thing if, this had all started 18 months ago when there was a glimmer and you were in the ring and there was, a shot at maybe this one day will resolve into a outcome that is positive for them. But this is not that. This is something they've been doing for 15, 20 years with a life without the possibility of parole sentence hanging over their head, and more even. I say 15, 20, it's been more, but they've been doing the right thing and the good work for long before there was ever even a chance or a fight for the possible good outcome. So I think that obviously was something that weighed heavy on Judge Jessic before he took the first step in kind of moving this down the road.
Yeah, the not lost in all of this, it's interesting. People say, well, is your work done? Because I generally, with some notable exceptions, don't do parole hearings. What started all of this was the habeas petition that was filed 2 years ago, maybe even today. I forget, it was May something. And our reply to the DA's screed is due this coming week. And so we're still in play on the habeas. And the difference between a habeas and a resentencing, the habeas challenges the conviction itself. So we've already accomplished on the resentencing what we needed to accomplish there. Now we kind of refocus on the habeas, and that unless something happens, will be filed this week, and that's we've got a whale of a habeas as well.
Yeah, that's something that hasn't been getting a lot of coverage because everyone's been so focused on the resentencing, but there is still one legal avenue that we're pursuing, and that is still possibly going to come to fruition. Yeah.
And it's funny because the habeas is what precipitated the resentencing. And now the resentencing is done, and we're circling back to the habeas. Cliff Gardner, who was instrumental. In fact, he's the godfather of post-conviction lawyers on the West Coast, has said that this case, which 2 years ago we were, and I've said this publicly, so I'm not sharing anything. I don't know that when we discussed it, we were on the precipice of, are you going to file this pro per, meaning without lawyers, or do we want to do it? And we said, what the heck? I love working with Cliff. Let's do it. And it is generated now. I asked Cliff on last Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever day it was, have you ever had a case that has generated more work from an initial habeas? And no, not in this short period of time. It's been unbelievable, the amount of post-conviction litigation that was generated out of something that we were on the fence with 2 years ago.
Yeah, Cliff's a really talented guy and very nice man as well. I've gotten to work with him a little bit throughout the course of this process. And the photo, I did just try to find it, but I don't have it right here on the tip of my fingers, and I don't want to hear the comments about my eyes. But the photo of you and Cliff embracing on the heels of the resentencing was really a very warm picture. It was nice to see you guys both so happy after such a long fight. It was really good to see.
Well, the odds are, I mean, look, there was nobody who gave us and them a shot 2 years ago. Remember, this is before Netflix. This is before Brian Murphy. This is before the Fox Nation. This is. It was
in a vacuum of nothing. It was there was. I had not heard the word Menendez in 5 years when that news broke. I mean, I was with you, so. It was, I maybe had heard it in the office, but in the general zeitgeist of the world, I had not really heard that case brought up in quite a long time. And all of a sudden you guys came out of nowhere with the habeas petition. And then all of a sudden, Netflix comes out and everything started swirling because it was back in the zeitgeist, but it was not something that was in popular culture at the time.
Yeah, there's a couple of, Robert Rand gets a lot of, attention, and deservedly so, in the Menudo case. But Roy Rosello, who is part and parcel of the habeas, Neri, N-E-R-Y, I don't ever want to forget her role in this. She's been essential. Rebecca, Tammy, the wives, Joan Vandermolen, and Terry Baralt, and I already mentioned Anna Maria, and I don't want to miss any of the family members, Brian and Natasha, and there's just, I could go through all of them. They've all just everybody has gone through just an amazing. There's also somebody else, and I don't know if he wants to be named, who's been central to this, so I won't mention his name for fear that I'll breach some confidence. But there's been, and shout out to Kimmy K. Kimmy K. Really, as she's preparing for the bar exam, was extremely helpful in this. A lot of people, it took a lot of people and a lot of cooperation, and there's still some stuff to be done, as we've mentioned, and I'm excited for it. But this was really something to savor, which we're doing, obviously.
Absolutely. And, once again, congratulations. And I will say that as this, ramped up and got to where it got this week, I had more than a few people in my own personal life who were blowing up my cell phone. And whether I could take that or leave that, we'll leave unsaid. But, it's gotten back into the zeitgeist in a big way. And those who are close to me are certainly very interested in it and looking for, all the updates they can get. So it was very nice to be able to share some positive news with those people. And it was very nice to have a positive vibe around the office, as you guys very deservedly were celebrated this week.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for all the yeoman's work you've done on this. And till next week, I'm sure we'll return to kind of our survey of all legal cases. There was so much stuff I want.
Wait, has there been something happening in the legal world this week?
Yeah. I'll see you next Sunday.
All right. I'll see you then, Mark. Thanks so much for the time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.